So here recently, Lincoln Riley was talking about spring practice and the processes they've had to undergo as his new adventure of the head coach of the USC Trojans begins. And one of the things that stood out to me is Lincoln Riley singing the praise of one player, a player they got out the transfer portal from none other than the University of Alabama, and that is inside linebacker Shane Lee. Today, we need to talk about why Shane Lee is going to be so key to this USC team as a whole. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Do you believe we will be able to see strides being made from USC's defense through spring and into next season? Let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, like and comment down below. Those interactions, though small, are massive to content creators such as myself in both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. However, with all that being said, we need to hop right into this. And I asked the question I did in the intro for a reason. Because if you were to ask me what area of USC am I most concerned about, the defense would probably be my answer. And I've talked about they have certain pieces on that defense, but it's all about making it come together in a successful unit. Corey Foreman is there, Damani Jackson is there, Rayshawn Davis, and now you add into the fold someone who Lincoln Riley is singing the praises of in Shane Lee. And not only is Shane Lee a talented prospect, a very talented linebacker, but it's the tangible experience you get in with Shane Lee that just is the separating factor, in my opinion. When we really dive into what it is Shane Lee was able to do with the Crimson Tide, it's very impressive considering the circumstances he found himself playing in. The year Shane Lee started at inside linebacker for the Crimson Tide, both starting linebackers went down before the season ever started, and in came Christian Harris and Shane Lee. Christian Harris, an individual who was a true freshman at the time, just like Shane Lee, and those two found success throughout the season. And there were growing pains, sure, but you're talking about two true freshmen playing the quarterback of the defense. There's going to be true freshman moments. However, what they did also do was develop greatly during that time. And if you look at how they began the year relative to how they ended the year, there was a massive difference. And Shane Lee was absolutely a beneficiary of that playing time. Lincoln Riley also sung the praises of Shane Lee's leadership ability and likened him to Jalen Hurts, who Lincoln Riley, while the head coach of OU, got out the transfer portal from Alabama. And in doing so, has given a massive compliment to what Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide have been able to establish in Tuscaloosa, and it's this. The culture Nick Saban has established has allowed success to continue at the University of Alabama because there's a clear set of expectations. Players know the expectations when they get to the program, and those expectations are reinforced. So that when you get an individual like Shane Lee, who now has a change of scenery, he's looking at this equation with the same mindset that's been instilled in him from the University of Alabama. And that's exactly what Lincoln Riley is talking about here. It's the approach that Nick Saban has made at the University of Alabama that makes that program a little bit unique, and that's what so many other coaches across the nation are trying to replicate. Because as is shown, it's a very successful way to run your program. So it was awesome to hear Lincoln Riley singing the praises of even some of the off-the-field aspects of Shane Lee and likening it to another Alabama player that he's got, really highlighting what it is Nick Saban and company have been able to establish in Tuscaloosa and what separates that institution. That was something I thought was very cool as an Alabama fan, but nonetheless, if we refocus back in on Shane Lee, I think this is somebody that's going to be of massive importance to USC's team as a whole, and more specifically, an incredibly important piece to USC's defense. And as I said in the intro, if you ask me the one area in USC I'm the most concerned about, I would point to the defense. And I know many people would point to the offensive line. That's an area that improved slightly from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, so I'm hoping those improvements can continue to be made, although at the end of the day, work still absolutely needs to be done on the offensive line. However, I contend that about almost any team I ever talk about. If you ever watch a lot of my content, you'll know I'm very much well in tune with the trenches, and I always think that your offensive line can always improve. It's where everything begins and ends, and if you don't have success there, you're just making it far more difficult on yourself than it needs to be. So I have to imagine that's going to be a major focal point of USC, especially with Caleb Williams coming into the situation. They want to put him in the most successful position possible. But then that turns our attention to the defense, because we know what Lincoln Riley offers on the offensive side of the ball. The offense is not something I'm innately concerned about, and especially when we talk about Lincoln Riley, but also Caleb Williams coming in, and a very talented quarterback who's got an unreal ceiling. The offensive side of the ball is something I think is going to take care of itself, but it's the defense that I am so interested in. And that's where I think Shane Lee is going to be of massive benefit to Alex Grinch in year one with USC, because he's seen so many different things, because he had such a successful year as the signal caller of Alabama's defense, a defense that is very complex, and he did that as a true freshman. Shane Lee is a very talented individual, one that would be starting at almost every institution across the nation. Alabama was just loaded at that inside linebacker position, and unfortunately for Shane Lee, he was dealing with injuries while trying to compete for one of those spots, which at Alabama is a very difficult thing to do, and we've seen that story time and time again. However, that does not take away from how talented a player is or what that player can bring to the table. Because if I had to predict, I'm predicting a big season for Shane Lee, and that he's going to be a key piece for this USC defense as their signal caller. Someone who's seen multiple different looks in the SEC and can now bring that good, tangible experience he has there to USC, something Alex Grinch and company are going to love. But I'm really interested in hearing from y'all. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. There's been a lot made about USC's first practice, and we heard what Colin Cowherd tweeted, and we're not going to talk about that because that's about the biggest piece of hyperbole I've ever seen. And it's great to have really solid spring practices, but at the end of the day, if you don't keep that energy rolling into the next season, it's all for nothing. And so that's going to be ultimately the most important thing. So with that, hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.